guys, so you've been learning about area and perimeter. So I want to share with you a story called Spaghetti and Meatballs for All. And this is going to help us learn some of those area and perimeter concepts. One fine day, Mrs. Comfort was busy tending the lettuce patch in her garden. "You know, it's been a long time since we've seen the family," she said to her husband. "You're right," answered Mr. Comfort. He was stretched out on a bench doing what he liked to do best in the vegetable garden, reading a cookbook. "Maybe it's time for a family reunion," Miss Comfort said. "A wonderful idea," Mr. Comfort agreed. Let's see. Menus, dinners for 2, serves 4 to 6, banquets. How many people do you think we would be having?" he asked. The Comforts called their children. They called their parents. Mrs. Comfort called her brother. Mr. Comfort called the next door neighbors, who were almost like family. Everyone could come. "That's 32 people altogether, including us," Mr. Comfort said. "What could possibly fit in our oven and still feed 32 people?" he wondered out loud. "Why not make your famous spaghetti and meatballs?" asked Mrs. Comfort. "Good thinking," he said. "Now, what about renting some tables and chairs?" asked Mrs. Comfort. She got out the phone book. 2 weeks later, the big day arrived. Mr. Comfort got up very early and spent all morning cooking. He baked 16 loaves of garlic bread and made 8 pounds of fresh pasta. He simmered 8 quarts of spaghetti sauce and rolled 96 meatballs. Mrs. Comfort picked all of her ripe tomatoes, cucumbers, and lettuce for a salad. While Mrs. Comfort waited for the tables and chairs she had rented, she drew a seating plan. Then she got out the dishes, the silverware, the glasses, the tablecloths, and some vases. When the rental company arrived, they were 1 chair short. "Don't worry," said Mr. Comfort. "You'll think of something." Mrs. Comfort found a folding chair. Now the tables were ready. Each had 4 place settings, 4 chairs, and a vase with lovely cut flowers. Mr. Comfort came out of the kitchen balancing 8 plates of celery and olives, 1 for each table. Just after noon, the Comfort's daughter and her husband arrived with their 2 children. "Welcome," said Mrs. Comfort. "Come sit down," said Mr. Comfort. "Let's push 2 tables together so you can sit with us," suggested the daughter. "But there won't be room," Mrs. Comfort said. "But there is," said Mr. Comfort. "There's plenty of room and plenty of garlic bread." Everyone was just about to sit down when a car pulled into the driveway. Mrs. Comfort's brother and his wife, their daughter, her husband, and their twin sons all spilled out. "Welcome," said Mr. Comfort. "Come sit down." "Oh, let's push over 2 more tables so we can all sit together," said Mrs. Comfort's brother's wife. The Comfort's daughter and her husband got up to help. "But that won't work," said Mrs. Comfort. "You're so right," Mr. Comfort said. "We'll have to push 2 more tables together." "But that won't work either," said Mrs. Comfort. "You're right," said Mrs. Comfort's brother's wife. "Make way!" shouted Mrs. Comfort's brother and the Comfort's son-in-law. They each carried over a table and put them side by side. "You don't understand," Miss Comfort sighed. "My plan was..." But no one heard her. Everyone was too busy. "Save some of that garlic bread for me," a new arrival called. "Me too, me too, me too," 3 more voices piped in. "Well, look who's here," said Mrs. Comfort's brother. It was the Comfort's next door neighbors with their daughter and son. "Hello, hello," said Mr. Comfort. "So glad to see you. Have a seat while I get more garlic bread." "But there is no place for them to sit," said Mrs. Comfort. "Don't worry," said Mrs. Comfort's brother's wife. "We'll just divide these tables into 2 groups of 4. "Go ahead," Miss Comfort said, "but I'm telling you, it's not going to work." "You fret too much," said Mr. Comfort. "Bread, anyone?" When all the tables had been rearranged, everyone sat down. See, Mom, the Comfort's daughter said, it worked out just fine. Miss Comfort sighed. Hiya, boomed a familiar voice. Mr. Comfort's father, mother, and their little terrier dog strolled in. Hello, Grandma. Hello, Grandpa, the Comfort's daughter shouted. Oh dear, said Mrs. Comfort. Where are they going to sit? No problem, said Mr. and Mrs. Comfort's next door neighbor. If we push all 8 tables into one long line, there will be enough room for everyone. Actually, Miss Comfort began to explain. Absolutely, said Mr. Comfort. He was carrying several big bowls of salad. Better move fast or this salad will really be tossed. No sooner had everyone gotten settled than Mrs. Comfort's mother and father drove up in their yellow convertible. Hello, Grammy. Hello, Gramps, the Comfort's daughter shouted. Mrs. Comfort put down her fork. Oh, dear, she said. Don't worry, we're all family, right? Gramps said. Let's just split this long line of tables into 2. There will be plenty of room for us to squeeze in. But it still isn't going to work, Mrs. Comfort started to say. A bowl of salad slid into her lap. Sorry, said one of Mrs. Comfort's brother's twin sons. Mr. and Mrs. Comfort and their 18 relatives and neighbors were finally all seated. They passed the salad and the bread. They shared the celery and the olives. And when they heard a cheery, "Hi, everyone," most of them held onto their plates. The Comfort's son and his wife pedaled up on a bicycle for 2. Their twin daughters rolled in on skates. Didn't I tell you, Mrs. Comfort said, there's not enough room. No problem, Mom, said the Comfort's son. We'll just divide these 2 tables into 4 pairs. Okie dokie? Wait, you're forgetting something, said Mrs. Comfort. We're out of salad over here, the Comfort's daughter said. Don't put any tomatoes in mine, the Comfort's next door neighbor's son said. Is there more garlic bread? Asked Mrs. Comfort's mother. Who's got my silverware? Asked Mr. Comfort's father. Hey, Mrs. Comfort's brother's daughter's son said to his twin brother. That's my bread you're eating. Get your fingers out of my salad, the Comfort's son's daughter said to her twin sister. Don't play with your food, said the Comfort's son's wife. What'd you say? Asked Mr. Comfort. I said, Mrs. Comfort said. Beep. A big red van parked at the curb. Out jumped Mrs. Comfort's sister with her brother and their triplets. All 3 of the triplets had brought their boyfriends, who were also triplets. Now do you see what I mean? Mrs. Comfort asked. Where are they all going to sit? Well, my dearest, said Mr. Comfort, I haven't served the spaghetti yet. We'll just move a few chairs, reset a few places, and there will be plenty of room for everyone. I give up, cried Mrs. Comfort. She sat down in her chair and didn't budge. I say we divide the 4 pairs of tables into 8 single tables, Mrs. Comfort's brother said. He and his wife moved 1 pair of tables apart. The triplets and their boyfriend moved the other 3 pairs. You see, said Mr. Comfort, it all worked out. I see that everything is exactly the way that I had it to begin with, said Mrs. Comfort. I knew you'd think of something, said Mr. Comfort. Now, how many meatballs would you like? All right, boys and girls, so that's the end of our story. So, you know, the Comforts had a lot of issues trying to get all their seating arrangements together as people kept coming and they kept moving tables, even though they had the same number of chairs. So we're going to spend a minute talking about area and perimeter and why that happened. So if you parents want to maybe do some of these activities with your kids at home, it would be a good way to practice the skills that we just talked about in this book. So at the beginning of the story, Mrs. Comfort knew that 32 people would be coming to the family reunion, and she took all 8 of the seats and put them each 8 tables with 4 chairs to have enough seats for everyone. And she didn't exactly use the words area and perimeter, but if we think about each tabletop as having 1 square unit, then the perimeter is 4, which means 4 people could sit at each table. When their daughter and her husband and their 2 kids arrived and they pushed the 2 tables together so that the 4 of them could sit with her parents, that made a rectangular table, and the area was 2 square units and a perimeter of 6, which worked for the time being because you pushed those 2 tables together so the middle parts, no one could sit there, so that took away a seat. But Mrs. Comfort knew that as more guests came, it wouldn't work. So each time guests arrived, they rearranged the tables into different rectangles so that more people could sit together. And the story gives the children a variety of ways to think about area and perimeter of rectangles. If you look at the figures here and the different ways that they had these tables arranged, you can see that they had all tables together in a 2x4, which gave them a perimeter of 12 to seat 12 people. And then they arranged it to a 1x8, and that only sat 18 people. And as it kept going, the rectangles kept getting bigger, but the perimeter kept getting smaller. And then finally, they separated it back out into the original plan that Mrs. Comfort had. And in that example, again, it was 32. If you would like to take some of these activities and extend your students' learning, you could cut out squares of cardboard or use small tiles so that they could arrange them to try to see different arrangements that would work for 32 people. You could watch the video again and go back through, and each time they make a different arrangement, you could use those tiles or cardboard squares to make the arrangements so that the students could actually see what they were doing and maybe try to come up with their own different arrangement for 32 people.